The text was supposed to go to her landlord. Emma Reyes stared at her phone screen, exhaustion making her vision blur as she read the message one more time before hitting send. I know I'm late again, but I promise I'll have the rent by Friday. Please don't file for eviction. My kids need stability right now. Her thumb hovered over the send button. It was nearly midnight and she'd just gotten home from a double shift at Mercy General Hospital where she worked as a pediatric nurse. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the ancient refrigerator and the soft breathing of her 3-year-old twins, Maya and Elijah, asleep in the bedroom they all shared. She hit send and immediately felt the familiar wave of shame wash over her. 28 years old and begging for more time to pay rent. This wasn't how her life was supposed to turn out. 4 years ago she'd been in her final year of nursing school, top of her class, with a bright future stretching out before her like an open road. Then came that conference in Chicago, the hotel bar, the man with the kind eyes and expensive watch who'd listened to her talk about her dreams of working with children. One night, that's all it had been. One perfect night where she'd felt seen and valued and desired in a way she'd never experienced before. They'd talked until dawn about everything and nothing. He'd told her about his work in tech, about building something that mattered, about the pressure of expectation. She'd shared her fears about graduating, about whether she was good enough, about her own childhood in foster care and her determination to help kids who felt as lost as she once had. When she'd woken up, he was gone. No note, no number, just a memory that felt increasingly dreamlike as the weeks passed. Then came the positive pregnancy test, then another, then the ultrasound that showed 2 tiny heartbeats flickering on the screen. She'd tried to find him, searched every social media platform, every tech conference attendee list she could access, but she'd only known his first name. Alexander, not Alex, never Alex. He'd been particular about that, and his eyes, those striking grey eyes that had looked at her like she was the only person in the world. But grey eyes and a common first name weren't enough to track someone down, especially not someone who'd clearly wanted to disappear. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from her thought. She glanced at the screen, expecting to see a reply from her landlord, probably a terse message about late fees or final warnings. Instead, the message made her blood run cold. Emma Reyes from the Northwestern Conference. Is this really you? Her heart hammered against her rib. The number was unfamiliar, definitely not her landlord's. She stared at the words, her mind racing. Northwestern Conference. 4 years ago, the night that changed everything. Her hands were shaking as she typed back. Who is this? I think I sent my last message to the wrong number. The response came immediately. It's Alexander. Alexander Chen. We met in Chicago. We spent the night talking. I've thought about you every day since then. Emma's vision tunneled. Alexander Chen. She typed the name into her browser with trembling fingers, and the screen filled with results. Alexander Chen, founder and CEO of Novatech Solutions. Net worth, estimated at $4 billion. Featured in Forbes, Fortune, Time magazine. One of the youngest self-made billionaires in America. And there, staring back at her from a dozen professional photos, were those grey eyes she'd never forgotten. The same sharp jawline, though his face was more angular now, hardened by years of building an empire. She looked at the message thread again, at her desperate plea, about rent money, and wanted to sink through the floor. Of all the wrong numbers in all the world, she'd somehow managed to text the father of her children, a man who probably didn't even remember what she looked like, a man who definitely didn't know he had 2 3-year-olds who had inherited his grey eyes and stubborn chin. Her phone rang. Not a text this time, an actual call. Alexander Chen's number flashed on the screen. Emma stared at it for 3 rings. 4, 5. She thought about letting it go to voicemail, about blocking the number and pretending this never happened, about protecting the life she'd built for herself and her children, small and struggling as it was. But something in her, some tiny flame of courage, or maybe just exhaustion with carrying secrets, made her answer. Hello? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Alexander Chen hadn't slept properly in 4 years. He'd built a $4 billion company, revolutionized cloud computing security, been featured on the cover of magazines and interviewed on national television, but none of it mattered because he'd lost something irreplaceable and he didn't know how to find it again. That night in Chicago haunted him. He could still remember the way Emma had laughed at his terrible jokes, the passion in her voice when she talked about helping children, the vulnerability in her eyes when she'd shared stories about growing up in the system. She'd been real in a way no one else in his world was real. No agenda, no calculation, just genuine human connection. He'd left that hotel room at dawn with every intention of coming back. He'd had an emergency call from his CTO about a critical security breach, had rushed to the airport still wearing yesterday's clothes, had spent 72 straight hours managing the crisis that threatened to destroy everything he'd built. By the time he'd made it back to Chicago, the conference was over, and Emma was gone. He'd tried everything. Hired private investigators who'd searched through nursing school records and hospital employment databases, scoured social media using every variation of her name he could think of. He'd even anonymously donated money to Northwestern's nursing program in hopes that she might attend an alumni event where he could find her. Nothing worked. Emma Reyes was a common enough name, and without more information, the search had hit dead end after dead end. He'd dated other women, of course, beautiful, accomplished women who understood his world and his schedule, but every relationship ended the same way, with him realizing he was comparing them all to a memory, to a single night 4 years ago when he'd felt truly seen by another person. His therapist said he was romanticizing the past, creating an idealized version of someone he barely knew, using the memory as a shield against real intimacy. Maybe she was right, but knowing that didn't make the ache go away. When his phone had buzzed with that text message, he'd assumed it was another wrong number and almost deleted it without reading. Then he'd seen the name, Emma Reyes. His heart had stopped. He'd stared at that message for a full minute, afraid that if he blinked it would disappear. The message itself was heartbreaking. Late rent, threat of eviction, children who needed stability. Children. She had children. Of course she did. 4 years was a long time. She'd probably met someone, built a life, moved on from a one-night encounter with a stranger. The thought made his chest tight with a loss he had no right to feel, but he had to know, had to hear her voice, had to confirm this wasn't some cosmic joke or case of mistaken identity. So he'd call, and when she answered, her voice soft and uncertain, saying just that one word, hello. 4 years of searching and longing, and regret crashed over him like a wave. Emma. His voice came out rougher than he intended. It's really you. I can't believe it's really you. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. He could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. Alexander. She said his name like a question, like she still didn't quite believe this was happening. I don't understand. How did you get this number? You texted me, he said, then immediately realized how that sounded. I mean, you sent me a message. I think you meant it for someone else. But it came to me instead. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with mortification. Oh God, the rent message. I sent that to you. I'm so sorry. I must have mistyped the number. I was exhausted and I wasn't thinking clearly. Please just delete it and forget you ever saw it. Emma. Wait. He stood up from his desk, pacing to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. I've been looking for you for 4 years. I went back to Chicago, to the hotel, but you were gone. I tried to find you, but I didn't have enough information. I thought I'd never see you again. Silence. He pressed on, needing her to understand. That night meant something to me. You meant something to... I know it sounds crazy. I know we barely knew each other, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. You're a billionaire. The words came out flat, almost accusatory. I saw the articles, the Forbes profile, all of Alexander Chen, tech genius, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in America. You probably have supermodels and actresses throwing themselves at you. Why would you remember a nursing student from a random conference? Because you were real, he said simply. Because you talked to me like I was just a person, not a net worth or a business opportunity. Because you made me laugh and made me think and made me feel something I'd never felt before. He heard her breath catch. Alexander, I need to tell you something. Her voice was shaking. That night, after you left, I found out I was pregnant. The world tilted sideways. Alexander's hand shot out to brace himself against the window. The cool glass, the only thing that felt solid and real. Pregnant, he repeated. the word foreign in his mouth. I have twins, Emma continued, her words coming faster now, like a dam had broken, a boy and a girl, Maya and Elijah. They're 3 years old, and they have your eyes, your chin, your stubborn determination. I tried to find you, I really did, but I only knew your first name, and I had no way to track you down, and then time kept passing, and I told myself it didn't matter, that we could manage on our own. Emma's legs gave out and she sank into the kitchen chair, her phone pressed so hard against her ear it hurt. She'd just told Alexander Chen, billionaire tech CEO, that he was the father of her children, the secret she'd carried alone for 3 years, the weight that had pressed down on her shoulders through every sleepless night, and every impossible choice between paying for groceries or paying the electric bill, was finally out in the open. The silence on the other end of the line stretched out so long she thought he might have hung up. Then she heard him breathing, deep, deliberate breaths, like he was trying to steady himself. Twins, he finally said. We have twins. The way he said, we made something crack open in her chest. Not you have twins, but we have twins. Like he was already claiming them, already stepping into a role she'd convinced herself he'd never want. I'm sorry, she whispered. I should have tried harder to find you. I should have done something more, but I was scared, and alone, and I didn't know what to do. And then time kept passing, and it got easier to just pretend that night never happened, that you were just a dream I'd had once. Emma, no. His voice was fierce now, urgent. Don't apologize. This isn't your fault. I'm the one who left without leaving a way to contact me. I'm the one who disappeared. If anyone should be sorry, it's me. She heard him moving, heard the sound of keys rattling. I need to see them. I need to see you. Where are you? I can be there in an hour, maybe less if traffic is light. Panic flared in her chest. No, wait. Alexander, you can't just show up here. It's the middle of the night. The kids are asleep. I haven't told them anything about their father, because I didn't know how to explain that I couldn't find you. They're 3 years old. They don't understand complicated situations. I can't just spring this on them. Then when? The desperation in his voice was palpable. When can I see them? See you? Emma, I've missed 3 years of their lives. 3 birthdays, 3 Christmases, first steps, first words, everything. I can't miss another day. She pressed her palm against her forehead, trying to think through the exhaustion and shock. Tomorrow, she heard herself say, I have the afternoon off. We can meet somewhere neutral, somewhere public. Let me prepare them first. Let me figure out what to tell them. Okay. She could hear him forcing himself to calm down, to be patient. Okay. Where? Name the place and I'll be there. Emma thought about the fancy restaurants and exclusive clubs a billionaire probably frequented, then dismissed them all. There's a park near my apartment, Riverside Park. There's a playground there, where I take Maya and Elijah most afternoons. 2 o'clock. I'll be there, Alexander said immediately. Emma, I know this is overwhelming. I know I'm a stranger to you in a lot of ways, but I want to be in their lives, in your life. We'll figure this out together. After they hung up, Emma sat in her dark kitchen for a long time, her mind spinning with possibilities and fears. What if Alexander decided he wanted custody? He had unlimited resources, the best lawyers money could buy. What if he looked at her cramped apartment and her second-hand furniture, and decided she wasn't fit to raise his children? What if he was angry that she'd kept them from him, even unintentionally? But beneath the fear was something else, something she was almost afraid to acknowledge. Hope that maybe, finally, she wouldn't have to carry this burden alone. Hope that her children might have a father who wanted them, who would love them. Hope that the connection she'd felt 4 years ago hadn't been just her imagination. She walked quietly to the bedroom and looked at her sleeping children. Maya was curled on her side, her dark curls spread across the pillow, one small hand clutching her stuffed rabbit. Elijah slept on his back, arms flung wide, his face peaceful and untroubled. They both had Alexander's grey eyes, though she wouldn't let herself think about that most days. Looking at them now, knowing that tomorrow they might meet their father for the first time, she felt the full weight of what was about to change. Your daddy's coming to meet you, she whispered into the darkness. I hope I'm doing the right thing. I hope this doesn't break all our hearts. She didn't sleep at all that night. Instead, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, rehearsing 1,000 different versions of tomorrow's meeting in her mind. None of them felt right. How did you introduce your children to a father they'd never met? How did you explain to a 3-year-old that the person they'd asked about hundreds of times, the absence they'd felt, without being able to name it, was suddenly going to be present in their lives? By the time dawn broke, she'd made a decision. She would tell Maya and Elijah the truth, or at least a version of it they could understand. They were meeting a friend, someone Mommy knew before they were born, someone who wanted to meet them very much. She wouldn't use the word father, not yet. That was something Alexander would have to earn, not just through biology, but through presence, through showing up, through love. At breakfast, Maya looked up from her cereal and asked, "Mommy, why do you look sad?" Emma forced a smile. "I'm not sad, baby, just tired. Hey, guess what? We're going to the park this afternoon to meet someone special." Elijah's face lit up. "Ice cream man?" "No, sweetheart, a grown-up friend, someone I knew before you and Maya were born." Maya's eyes narrowed with the suspicious intelligence of a too smart 3-year-old. "Is it our dad?" The question hit Emma like a physical blow. She and Maya had had this conversation before, but never with the knowledge that she'd be meeting him in just a few hours. "Why would you ask that, baby?" Maya shrugged, returning her attention to her cereal. "Sarah at daycare says everybody has a dad. We don't have one, so maybe he's coming to visit." Alexander arrived at Riverside Park 45 minutes early. He sat in his car, a deliberately understated sedan instead of his usual driver and town car, and tried to calm the storm of emotions raging through him. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He'd closed a $100 million deal last month without breaking a sweat, had given a keynote address to 15,000 people without notes, but the thought of meeting his children for the first time had him on the verge of panic. He'd spent the morning shopping, something he never did personally anymore. His assistant usually handled everything, but this felt too important to delegate. He'd bought gifts, then second-guessed every choice. Were the toys age-appropriate? Too expensive? Not expensive enough? Would Emma think he was trying to buy their affection? He'd finally settled on 2 stuffed animals, a rabbit for Maya and a lion for Elijah, soft and simple, and hopefully non-threatening. At exactly 2 o'clock he saw them. Emma emerged from a side path pushing a double stroller, and Alexander's breath caught in his throat. She looked exactly as he remembered, and completely different all at once. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a sweater that had seen better days, but she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. And the children. God, the children. They climbed out of the stroller as Emma set the brake, and Alexander felt his heart stop. They were small, so much smaller than he'd imagined, with chubby toddler legs and serious little faces. The girl, Maya, had wild dark curls and was chattering away at Emma, pointing at the swings. The boy, Elijah, was quieter, taking in his surroundings with those grey eyes that Alexander saw every morning in the mirror. He forced himself to get out of the car, to walk across the grass toward them. Emma saw him coming and he watched her entire body tense. She crouched down saying something to the twins, and they both turned to look at him. Alexander's steps slowed. What if they were afraid of him? What if they cried? What if they sensed he was a stranger, who had no right to be in their lives? But Maya, bold and curious, took a step forward. "Are you Mommy's friend?" Her voice was high and clear, and Alexander felt tears prick his eyes at the simple question. He knelt down on the grass, bringing himself to their level. "Yes," he managed. "I'm your Mommy's friend. My name is Alexander." Elijah moved closer to Emma, more cautious than his sister, but Maya studied Alexander with an intensity that reminded him of himself. "You have same eyes as us," she announced. "Mommy says they're special gray." Alexander glanced up at Emma, who had her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. He looked back at Maya and Elijah, at these 2 perfect small humans who carried half his DNA, who existed because of one night 4 years ago when 2 lonely people had found each other in a hotel bar. "Your eyes are very special," he agreed, his voice thick. "The most special eyes I've ever seen." Maya seemed satisfied with this answer. She grabbed his hand, her tiny fingers wrapping around 2 of his. "You want to push me on the swing?" The next hour passed in a blur of pushing swings and helping with the slide and watching Maya and Elijah play with the fierce attention of someone who'd missed every moment of their lives so far. and was determined not to miss another second. Emma stood nearby, her arms wrapped around herself, watching with an expression Alexander couldn't quite read. When the twins were distracted by another child's ball, Alexander moved to stand beside her. "They're incredible," he said quietly. "Emma, they're absolutely incredible." "They ask about you," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not you specifically, but about their father. Maya asked this morning if you were coming, like she knew somehow." Alexander felt something break open in his chest. "I want to be in their life. I want to be their father, not just biologically, but really be there. I know I have no right to ask. I know I'm late, but please, please give me a chance." Emma turned to look at him, and he saw the fear and hope warring in her expression. "I read about you last night." "Really read? Not just the Forbes profile. You work 18-hour days. You travel constantly. You're building an empire. How are you going to fit 2-3-year-olds into that life?" "I'll make room," Alexander said immediately. "I'll hire help. I'll cut back on travel. I'll do whatever it takes." "Emma, I built a $4 billion company from nothing. I can figure out how to be a good father." "It's not about money," Emma said, and there was steel in her voice now. "They don't need expensive toys or a trust fund. They need someone who shows up, someone who keeps promises, someone who doesn't disappear when things get hard." The accusation hung between them, unspoken but clear. He'd disappeared once before. How could she trust that he wouldn't do it again? They sat on a park bench while Maya and Elijah played in a sandbox with 2 other children. Alexander was watching his children with the focused intensity of someone memorizing every detail, but Emma could see his mind working, processing, calculating the way he probably did in boardrooms. "I want to propose something," he said finally, "and I need you to hear me out before you say no." Emma's stomach tightened. Here it comes, she thought. The custody demands, the lawyers, the fight she'd always known was inevitable. "I'm listening," she said, keeping her voice neutral. Alexander turned to face her fully. "Move in with me, you and Maya and Elijah. I have a penthouse, plenty of space. You wouldn't have to worry about rent or bills or working double shifts. You could focus on being with them, on your nursing career without the financial stress. They'd have stability, security, everything they need." Emma stared at him. "You want me to move in with you? We haven't seen each other in 4 years. We spent one night together. You're essentially a stranger to me now, and you want me to uproot my children and move into your penthouse." "I know how it sounds," Alexander said quickly, "but think about it practically. You're struggling, Emma. I read that text you sent. You're behind on rent, you're working yourself to exhaustion, you can barely keep your head above water. I can fix all of that. I can make your life easier by making me dependent on you." Emma's voice rose slightly, and she fought to keep it down for the children's sake. "By putting me in a position where I have no power, no autonomy? What happens when you get tired of playing house? What happens when you meet someone you actually want to be with? Where does that leave me and my children?" "Our children," Alexander corrected gently. "And I'm not proposing this lightly. I've thought about nothing else since you told me about them." Emma laughed bitterly. "You've known about them for less than 24 hours. That's not exactly a considered decision." "I've been thinking about you for 4 years," Alexander countered. "That night in Chicago, what we shared, that connection, I felt it then, and I still feel it now." "Don't tell me you didn't feel it too." Emma looked away, unable to meet his eye, because he was right. She had felt it, even now, sitting beside him. She felt that same pull, that same sense of being seen and understood in a way she rarely experienced. But feelings weren't enough to build a life on, especially not when children were involved. "Even if I wanted to, which I'm not saying I do, it wouldn't work," she said. "We're from completely different worlds. You're a billionaire, I'm a single mother, living paycheck to paycheck. Your friends probably summer in the Hamptons. Mine are other nurses who split appetizers at Applebee's, because that's all we can afford. We'd be miserable, or we'd be happy." Alexander said, "Emma, I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not asking you to pretend to be something you're not. I'm asking for a chance to get to know my children, a chance to make your life easier, a chance to see if what we felt 4 years ago was real or just a beautiful memory. He pulled a business card from his wallet and pressed it into her hand. Think about it. Talk to your friends, your family, whoever you trust, but please consider it. Not just for me, but for Maya and Elijah. They deserve to have both parents in their lives. They deserve stability and security. Emma looked down at the card. Alexander Chen, CEO, Novatech Solutions. A phone number, an email address, a portal to a different life, one where she didn't lie awake at night, terrified of getting sick because she couldn't afford to miss work, where she didn't have to choose between buying her children new shoes or paying the heating bill, but also a life where she'd be in Alexander's world, subject to his rules, potentially losing herself and her independence in the process. I need time, she said finally. I can't make this decision right now. Take all the time you need, Alexander said. But Emma, I meant what I said. I want to be in their lives. If you don't want to move in, fine, we'll figure out something else. Visitation, co-parenting, whatever works. But I'm not disappearing again. Maya chose that moment to run over, sand covering her hands and a huge smile on her face. Mummy, Alexander, look what we made. She dragged them both over to the sandbox where Elijah was carefully patting a sand castle into shape. It was lopsided and already starting to crumble, but both children looked at it with such pride that Emma felt her heart squeak. It's beautiful, Alexander said, crouching down beside Elijah. You're really good at building. Did you know I build things too? With computers instead of sand, but still building. Elijah looked up at him with those serious grey eyes. Can you help me make it taller? Emma watched as Alexander carefully showed Elijah how to pack the sand more firmly, how to add supports, his expensive watch getting covered in grit. He was patient and gentle, following Elijah's lead, praising every addition to the structure. And she saw it then. What might be possible? Not a fairy tale, not some perfect solution to all her problems, but maybe, possibly, a partnership. Maybe two adults who cared about two children and wanted to do right by them. That night, after putting Maya and Elijah to bed, Emma did what she should have done immediately. She researched Alexander Chen thoroughly. She started with the business profiles, the Forbes and Fortune articles that painted him as a wonderkind who'd revolutionized cloud security, orphaned at 16, raised himself through determination and intelligence, put himself through MIT, started Novatech in a garage 5 years ago, and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar company. The business press loved him, but business success didn't make someone a good father. She dug deeper, looking for scandal, for red flags, for any indication that Alexander wasn't what he appeared to be. She found surprisingly little: no DUIs, no lawsuits, no accusations of harassment or misconduct. He'd been photographed at charity events with various women over the years, beautiful socialites and actresses, but nothing that looked serious or long-term. Most telling were the interviews where he talked about his company culture. He'd instituted generous parental leave policies, on-site childcare, flexible working arrangements. One article quoted him saying, "I grew up without parents. I know what that whole feels like. I never want my employees to feel like they have to choose between their careers and their families." Emma sat back, staring at the screen. Was it possible? Could Alexander really be as decent as he appeared? Her phone rang, making her jump. It was her best friend Rachel, another nurse who'd been Emma's rock through the pregnancy and the 3 years since. "So," Rachel demanded without preamble, "how did it go? Is he real? Is he awful? Do I need to come over with wine and murder plans?" Despite everything, Emma laughed. "It's complicated. Everything's complicated. Give me detail." Emma spent the next hour filling Rachel in on everything, from the wrong text to the park meeting, to Alexander's proposition. Rachel listened without interrupting, which was unusual enough that Emma knew her friend was taking this seriously. "Okay," Rachel said when Emma finished. "I have thoughts. First, it's absolutely insane that you sent a text to the father of your children by complete accident. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Second, this man is either genuinely interested in being a father, or he's got some ulterior motive we haven't figured out yet. Third, Moving in with him is either the best decision you'll ever make, or the worst, and I have no idea which. You're not helping, Emma said. I'm being honest. Look, you know I love you. You know I'll support whatever you decide. But Emma, you've been drowning. I see it every day. You're exhausted, you're stressed. You can barely afford rent, let alone anything extra for the kids. If this man is offering you a life raft, maybe you should consider taking it. Emma pressed her palm to her forehead. But what if it's not a life raft? What if it's a trap? What if he decides he wants full custody? He could afford lawyers I can't even imagine. He could make a case that I'm an unfit mother because I can't provide for them properly. Has he threatened that? Rachel asked. No, Emma admitted. He's been nothing but respectful, patient. He gave me time to think. He even said if I don't want to move in, we'll figure out co-parenting instead. Then maybe he means it, Rachel said gently. Maybe he really does just want to be a father. Maybe this is one of those rare situations where someone with resources wants to use them for good instead of control. After they hung up, Emma pulled up the business card Alexander had given her. Her finger hovered over the phone number. It was nearly 11 o'clock. Too late to call. But before she could talk herself out of it, she typed out a text. I've been thinking about your offer. I have questions. Can we meet? Just the two of us. The response came within seconds. Tomorrow, anywhere you want. Thank you, Emma. She set the phone down and walked to the bedroom to check on Maya and Elijah one more time. They were sleeping peacefully, unaware that their entire world might be about to change. Emma had spent 3 years building a life for them, humble and struggling as it was. It was her. She'd done it alone, without help, without handouts. Moving in with Alexander would mean giving up that independence, that pride in self-sufficiency, but it would also mean her children would have opportunities she could never provide on her own. Good schools, stable housing, 2 parents who wanted them. Was her pride worth more than their well-being? The next morning, Emma arranged for Rachel to watch the twins, and met Alexander at a small coffee shop far from both their neighborhood. He arrived in jeans and a simple sweater, looking more like the man she'd met 4 years ago than the billionaire CEO from the photos. Thank you for meeting me, he said, sliding into the booth across from her. I know this is overwhelming. Emma wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, drawing strength from its warmth. I need answers, real answers, not corporate speak or whatever you tell investors. Alexander nodded. Ask me anything. Why now? Emma leaned forward. You've been a billionaire for years. You could have hired investigators, used facial recognition technology, done whatever it took to find me. Why didn't you? The question clearly struck a nerve. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, staring into his own coffee. I did hire investigators, he said finally. They searched for months. But Emma Reyes is a common name, and I didn't have enough information. I didn't know which nursing school you attended, which city you were from, anything that could narrow the search. The investigators came back with hundreds of potential matches. I looked through every single one, every photo, every social media profile. None of them were you. He looked up, and the pain in his eyes was raw and real. Eventually I had to accept that maybe I wasn't supposed to find you. Maybe that night was meant to be just a memory. But I never stopped thinking about you, never stopped hoping that somehow, someday, I'd see you again. Emma wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. What about the women? I saw the photos. Alexander, models, actresses, socialites. You clearly moved on. I dated, Alexander admitted. I tried to move on. Every relationship ended the same way, with me realizing I was looking for you in every woman I met. My last girlfriend told me I was emotionally unavailable, that I was hung up on some fantasy. She was probably right. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. But you're not a fantasy, you're real, and now I find out we have children together, that I've missed 3 years of their lives. Emma, I can't get those years back, but I can be there for every day going forward. I can be the father they deserve. Emma pulled her hands back, needing space to think. If I agree to this, to moving in, I need ground rules. This isn't a relationship, we're co-parenting, nothing more. I need my own space, my own room. I need to be able to leave if things don't work out. No lawyers, no custody battles. Agreed, Alexander said immediately. What else? I keep working. I'm not giving up my nursing career. I work too hard for it. Of course, I'd never ask you to give up something that matters to you. Emma took a breath. And we tell Maya and Elijah the truth, that you're their father. I won't lie to them, or pretend this is something it's not, but we tell them together, and we make sure they understand this doesn't change how much I love them. Alexander's eyes glistened. When soon, Emma said, but not today. Let them get used to you first. Let them see you show up, keep promises, be consistent, then we tell them. I can do that, Alexander said. Emma, I know you have every reason not to trust me, but I promise you, I will show up, for them and for you, whatever it takes. 2 weeks later, Alexander had proven himself in small but meaningful ways. He showed up at the park every afternoon, rain or shine. He learned Maya's favorite books and read them with funny voices that made her giggle. He sat patiently with Elijah building elaborate block towers. He brought coffee for Emma and never once complained about spending his afternoons sitting on playground benches instead of in boardrooms. Emma watched him integrate himself into their lives with a gentleness that broke down her defenses piece by piece. He asked questions about Maya and Elijah's routines, their likes and dislikes, their fears and joys. He deferred to Emma's parenting decisions without argument. He was patient when Elijah had a tantrum about leaving the park, and celebrated when Maya finally mastered the monkey bars. On the 15th day, Emma knew it was time. She invited Alexander to her apartment for the first time. He arrived exactly on time, and she saw him take in the cramped space, the second-hand furniture, the water stain on the ceiling she'd been trying to get the landlord to fix for months. But his expression held no judgment, only understanding. Maya and Elijah were excited to have Alexander visit their home. They showed him their room, their toys, their small collection of books. Alexander sat on the floor and played with them, looking perfectly comfortable, despite his expensive clothes, and the fact that he probably had a penthouse worth millions waiting across town. After an hour of play, Emma took a breath and said, Maya, Elijah, come sit with Mommy and Alexander. We need to talk about something important. The twins climbed onto the couch, sensing the gravity in her tone. Maya settled beside Emma while Elijah chose to sit next to Alexander, a choice that made Emma's heart clench. Alexander looked at Emma, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded, giving him permission. Maya, Elijah, Alexander began, his voice gentle but clear. Do you know what a daddy is? Maya nodded seriously. Sarah has a daddy. He picks her up from daycare and plays with her. That's right, Alexander said. Well, I'm your daddy. I'm the person who helped make you with Mommy, and I love you very much. There was a moment of stunned silence. Maya looked from Alexander to Emma, her little face scrunched in concentration. You're our daddy, she asked. But where were you? The question was so simple, so direct, and it cut straight to the heart of everything. Emma started to answer, to offer some explanation, but Alexander spoke first. I didn't know about you, he said honestly. Mommy and I met a long time ago, and then I had to go away for work. I didn't know she was going to have you two wonderful kids. If I had known, I would have been here from the very beginning, but I'm here now, and I'm not going away again. Elijah, who'd been quietly processing, looked up at Alexander with those serious gray eyes. You're staying. The vulnerability in that question, the hope mixed with fear, made both adults' eyes fill with tears. I'm staying, Alexander promised. I'm your daddy, and daddies don't leave. I'm going to be here for you, every single day. Maya threw her arms around Alexander's neck with the wholehearted trust of a child. I knew it, she said triumphantly. I told Mommy you were our daddy. I could tell from your eyes. Elijah was more hesitant, but after watching his sister, he leaned against Alexander's side. Alexander wrapped an arm around each twin, looking at Emma, over their heads with an expression of such overwhelming emotion that she had to look away. That night after the twins were asleep, Emma and Alexander sat in her tiny kitchen drinking tea. The apartment felt different now, charged with new possibilities and old fears. They took it well, Alexander said quietly. Better than I hoped. Children are resilient, Emma replied. But Alexander, this is where it gets real. You told them you're staying. That's a promise you can't break. If you're not absolutely certain you can keep it, you need to tell me now. Alexander set down his tea and looked at her directly. I'm certain, Emma. I've spent my entire adult life building a company, accumulating wealth, chasing success, and none of it means anything compared to what I felt today, when Maya and Elijah called me daddy. That's what I want to build now, a family, with you and them. Emma felt something crack in her chest, some wall she'd built to protect herself. I've decided, she said, we'll move in with you, but the ground rules still apply. This is for the kids, to give them stability and 2 parents. It's not a romance. Understood, Alexander said, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he thought it might become more. When? Next month. I need to give notice at my apartment, talk to my supervisor at the hospital about potentially changing my schedule, and we need to prepare Maya and Elijah. This is going to be a huge change for them. Whatever you need, Alexander said. I'll hire movers, help you pack, arrange everything. Emma, I'm going to make this work for all of us. Moving day arrived with a mixture of excitement and terror. Emma stood in the lobby of Alexander's building holding Maya and Elijah's hands, while a doorman in an actual uniform greeted them by name. The elevator was larger than her old bathroom. Maya and Elijah were silent, their eyes huge as they took in the marble floors and crystal chandeliers. When the elevator doors opened on the penthouse floor, Emma's breath caught. Alexander's home was stunning, but not cold or ostentatious. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The furniture was modern but comfortable, and everywhere she looked, she saw evidence that Alexander had prepared for their arrival. A corner of the living room had been transformed into a play area with toys and books. 3 bedrooms had been set up, one for Emma with an attached bathroom, and 2 smaller rooms for Maya and Elijah, each decorated in soft colors with child-sized furniture. I didn't know what they'd like, Alexander said, appearing behind them, so I got basics, but we can change anything. This is your home now. I want you all to feel comfortable here. Maya had already released Emma's hand and was exploring, her initial shyness overcome by curiosity. Elijah stayed close to Emma, overwhelmed by the size and newness of everything. Over the next few weeks, they found their rhythm. Emma continued working at the hospital, but with Alexander's help arranging childcare, she was able to cut back to normal 40-hour weeks instead of constant doubles. Maya and Elijah adjusted to their new preschool, one with art classes and music programs Emma could never have afforded on her own, and Alexander kept his promise. He showed up. He rearranged his schedule to have breakfast with the twins every morning. He learned to braid Maya's hair and helped Elijah with his puzzle obsession. He attended every preschool event, every doctor's appointment, every ordinary moment that made up the fabric of family life. Emma watched him transform from billionaire CEO to devoted father, and something in her heart began to soften. One evening, 3 months after they'd moved in, Emma found Alexander sitting on the floor of Maya and Elijah's room, reading them a bedtime story. The twins were curled up on either side of him, fighting sleep, and the scene was so perfectly domestic that Emma had to lean against the doorframe to steady herself. This was what she'd dreamed of during those long nights when she'd been pregnant and alone. Not the money or the penthouse, but this simple moment of a father reading to his children. After the twins were asleep, Alexander found Emma on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, handing her a cup of tea. "I was thinking about that night in Chicago," Emma admitted. "How, if you'd stayed, if I'd found you, if things had been different from the start, would we be here anyway, or was this the path we were always meant to take?" Alexander stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I don't know, but I know I wouldn't change where we ended up. Emma, these past 3 months have been the happiest of my life, watching Maya and Elijah grow, getting to know you again, building this family. It's everything I didn't know I wanted." Emma looked at him, at this man who'd appeared in her life through a wrong text and a twist of fate. "I need to tell you something," she said. "The ground rules, the ones about this not being a relationship, about keeping things separate." "Yes." Alexander's voice was careful, neutral. "I think I was wrong," Emma said, her heart pounding. "Or maybe I was right at the time. But things have changed. You've changed them. You've shown up every single day. You've been patient and kind, and everything Maya and Elijah need, everything I need, even though I was too scared to admit it." Alexander set down his tea, his full attention on her. "Emma, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that what we had 4 years ago, That connection, it's still there, it never went away. And watching you with our children, seeing the father you've become, the man you are, I think I'm falling for you. Really falling. Not just gratitude or convenience, but actual feelings. Alexander's eyes went wide. You have no idea how long I've wanted to hear you say that, Emma. I've been in love with you since that night in Chicago. I've loved you through 4 years of searching, through every moment of the past 3 months when I was respecting your boundaries, but dying to tell you how I felt. He took her hands in his. I love you. I love our family. I love the life we're building together. And if you're ready, if you want to make this real, not just co-parenting but an actual relationship, then I'm ready too. Emma felt tears streaming down her face, but for once they were happy tears. I want that. I want all of it. A real family, a real relationship, everything. Alexander pulled her close, and when he kissed her, it felt like coming home, like the completion of a journey that had started 4 years ago, with a chance meeting and had led them through separation and struggle to this moment, this second chance. The kiss was interrupted by a small voice from behind them. Mommy? Daddy? Why are you crying? Maya stood in the doorway in her pajamas, Elijah peeking out from behind her. Emma and Alexander broke apart, laughing through their tears. Happy crying, baby. Emma, sometimes people cry when they're very happy. Maya considered this, then smiled. Are you happy because we're a family now? Emma looked at Alexander, at their children, at the life they'd somehow managed to build from a wrong text and a willingness to take a chance. Yes, sweetheart, we're happy because we're a family, a real family. Elijah ran over and hugged Emma's legs. Good. I like being a family. That night, after settling the twins back into bed, Emma and Alexander sat together on the couch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. It hadn't been an easy road. Emma had struggled with pride and fear, Alexander with regret and the weight of time lost. But they'd found their way to each other, built something real and lasting out of the chaos of a simple wrong text. Maya and Elijah would grow up with 2 parents who loved them and each other. Emma would continue her nursing career, helping children the way she'd always dreamed. Alexander would balance his business empire with the family that now mattered more than any deal or acquisition. They would face challenges, certainly. No life was perfect, but they would face them together, as partners, as parents, as 2 people who'd been given an unexpected second chance, and chose not to waste it. Sometimes the wrong number turns out to be exactly the right one. Sometimes a simple mistake becomes the beginning of something extraordinary. And sometimes, love finds a way, even when the odds seem impossible.